to us.
Yes. Yeah.
Successful.
Just here?
Wow. It's bright out here.
Right. Yes, please go ahead.
I don't know if this... Yes, this is working. Hello, everybody. Hi, I'm Adam Smith.
This one's complete.
I just wanted to say a few words at the beginning of this panel because you'll notice in your program there are 6 people named and we only have 5 on stage, and that's because, unfortunately, our moderator-to-be, Chris Gunter, is still in Atlanta, US, which isn't very helpful. But she tried very hard to get here. She tried 3 different aeroplanes, but none of them worked, so she couldn't come. So in her absence, Louise Fresco has very kindly agreed to take over the role of moderator for the panel. So Louise will be moderating, and I think you've probably already met her. She is president of Wageningen University in the Netherlands, and she gave a nice talk this morning. I should just very briefly introduce the other panelists. Professor Kato from Osaka Medical School. Tim Hunt, 2001 Nobel laureate in physiology or medicine. Seiji Hasegawa, who is a science news editor. I'm not going to try and pronounce your news organization, I'm sorry. I apologize. And Clara Gaff from Melbourne Health Genetics, is that right?
Near enough.
Near enough. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. Anyway, I'll leave you to get on with the discussion, and as you'll see, there are circulating microphones, and so in this session, audience participation is encouraged. Okay, Louise.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to sit here with such a distinguished panel, and I promise you, you will have a chance to speak as well, because this morning you've all been very patient. And how can we not have a session here which is about a dialogue if we don't let you have a chance to dialogue with us? So have a little bit of patience. I will ask the panelists to give their view of the subject first, and then we'll open it up quite early to debate. Because if there's one subject, I think, which is really complicating today's application of science, it's the public attitude to genetics. There is, I think, as a result of many different factors, there's a real fear of genetics, a fear that science is going too far, a fear that we are meddling with nature, which has a lot to do with the enormous confusion that exists now that we have the internet on the one hand, that the media often give different positions, and I'll have our media colleagues speak to this, and it seems sometimes that if one party reports that things are dangerous and the other party says, no, it's all good, then the truth must be somewhere in the middle. Unfortunately, in these issues, it's not always so that the truth is in the middle. At the same time, I want to say from the outset that we as scientists have been certainly amiss in not communicating earlier about what was happening in science, what the choices are. Similarly, I think politicians have often gladly let the scientists decide what things were about. We're not always brave enough to actually take decisions. Scientists cannot take political decisions, and political people cannot take scientific decisions. So that's an enormous source of confusion, and you, the public, suffer from that. Because this is, on the one hand, an area where we're making enormous progress for the better of mankind, but where we also run the risk of getting really confused. So that for an introduction. Now let me ask Kato, can you, from your perspective, tell us how you feel about this?
Well, I don't have many complicated things to say, but I just want to say a few things. And well, I think the audience enjoyed this morning's talks quite a lot, and there are diversity of topics. So I think one of the challenges we have is to know how to communicate and also how to discuss less clear and complicated issues of science. For example, Japanese public, I think, know a lot about IPS, and many of the stories are in the media. But I don't think many know about current activities in the so-called genomics. So I think we need to do some activities to talk about those issues. And I think 2 things are important. One is the role of scientists, of course. I think people enjoyed this morning the comments by Tim Hunt. And those lively talks by scientists is quite important. So I always believe that the characters of scientists and also the meeting scientists themselves is quite important. And secondly, I think coming back to the basic issue of sharing scientific knowledge, I think role of school education is quite important. I didn't think so for some time ago, but I now think the school education can serve as a basis of further discussions and also when people meet scientists. And I can tell you that a few years ago, the curriculum of biology in Japan, Japanese high school, quite dramatically changed, so that it now has molecular biology and genetics quite a lot. So at the moment, people may not know much about cutting-edge genetics and genomics, but we will have more people with basic knowledge. So on top of that, the role of scientists is important.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kata-san. Tim, give us your wisdom.
I have no... I'm stupid.
That's the best way to start.
Well, I think, that's how we were taught to be, There is a difficulty, I always think, with the public understanding of science, because actually science, for me, is very difficult to understand. I'm reasonably good at biology, but when it comes to physics, there are things I really can't explain. I mean, a good example of something I absolutely can't explain at all is why light goes through the glass and through the water, but it doesn't go through the floor. It goes through the air, but it bounces off the mirror. Now, that's a very good example of us. And in school, we measured the refractive index of things, but nobody ever explained to me why the light went through the prism and not through the floor. And I became aware of this shortly after I was nominated as a Nobel laureate. So here I am, a genius apparently. And I looked through my daughter's bedroom window and I said, how the hell do the photons get through the glass? Oh Lord, I didn't know. And the more I thought about this, and I asked lots of people what the answer was, well, I mean, people would say answers like, well, because the glass doesn't absorb the light. Well, I mean, that's true, but why doesn't it absorb the light? And then I discovered that actually the answer to this question is extremely well known by people like Tominaga, Feynman, and Schwinger. But it lies deep in quantum mechanics.
Absolutely.
And it's completely incomprehensible to me. Now, what are we supposed to do about that? I mean, do we trust them or don't we? Richard Feynman memorably said that this was a theory so accurate that if you were to measure the distance between New York and Los Angeles, it would be accurate to the width of a human hair. That is a very, very accurate theory. It's basically right. And I don't understand it at all. So, but when it comes to biology, on the other hand, I have first-hand experience, and I know how it works. And you get situations like this. For 50 years, the tobacco companies denied that smoking caused cancer. Actually, it was proven by about 1948 that smoking caused cancer. Absolutely undeniable evidence. So how is it possible that a perfectly valid scientific observation could be denied for 50 years by advertiser, by vested interests? I mean, that's extraordinary to me. And when I went back, I actually had to go and look at the original evidence. The original evidence is absolutely clear-cut. No question about it at all. So, we're in a very funny position. So I think I conclude that although scientists, can argue with their head, very often that's not what's important. It's people's hearts and stomachs. What they really feel about stuff is important. And we scientists don't fight the fight on those. We try and do it all with our heads, and that's not where we should be fighting. So that's what I agree with you. It's largely about education. I mean, I think if you really try to explain people how the world is, but then you get terrible trouble. I mean, let's not go there because
we'll take those points back, because I think it's the hearts or the minds and the emotions, or the emotions, I should say, the heart, and the minds and the rational side is one dimension of the debate. The other one is, can you understand? Can the public at large really understand science enough to have an idea about it?
Yeah, well, I would say no, because there are lots of things I can't understand at all. And I'm supposed to be pretty smart and a scientist, So how would you expect?
Exactly, and the point is, of course, you make is, can trust be built even on a lack of understanding?
Yes.
That's the key question. We'll keep that question. I see people nodding. We'll come back to you. Let me just do my tour. Let me know what your feelings are.
Okay, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here with Nobel laureate and with distinguished scientists. So I have been working as a science writer for more than 20 years. I want to mention a journalist point of view about these issues. So 20 years ago, scientists don't care about the outreach of the scientific what they done. But now, the situation is dramatically changed. Scientists must say what they're doing now, must explain exactly. And now, people in Japan is now interested in genomic science and life science. The number of showing interest in the increasing now, I guess. After Professor Shinya Yamanaka is awarded the Nobel Prize, the government survey showed the interest towards the genomic science is rising, especially women and young generation. Young generation want to be a researcher, something like that, after that. So last year, there are a lot of gene analysis companies have launched. So people want to know their possibility to be disease such as lung cancer and the stroke and to resistant to the alcohol or something like that. But I guess people don't understand what exactly the genome science means. And I must, as a journalist, I must always face the problem to explain exactly what is accurate meaning of the science. It's a problem. Now I'm struggling to explain the accurate and easily to communicate.
But you guys are very good at this, right?
Yeah. It's a problem, I think.
I mean, I think you have to be a specialist communicator.
No, not yet. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I mentioned, I want to say that as Dr. Kato mentioned about the role of scientists is very important, and media too. There are, in Japan, so now the government want to increase the number of the science communicators, but not yet enough. That's the problem now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Hasegawa-san. Actually, that's an important point I want to take back with the audience as well. Should, for example, in the funding of research projects, a percentage be dedicated to communication, which is not usual now in projects, but maybe that is something we could discuss later on. Then we have our last speaker, Clara-san. Tell us what you feel about the subject.
Yeah, well, my views are really influenced by where I sit professionally, which is very much in the application of genetics and genomics in healthcare. And so in some ways, it's, as a genetic counsellor, I'm at the intersection between the ethics, the science and communication. And what I see is a lot of interest in genetics and genomics, and certainly good attendance at public forums and when I'm talking to people, socially, there's a lot of interest in this area. I think the challenge is in conveying the complexities that we face, that the channels of information that people hear at the moment, or what they hear from those channels, I should be more accurate rather than what the messaging is it leaves people with impressions, and there's greater complexity, as we heard this morning, in how much we are or aren't able to say about our genome. And to come to the question of that Tim raised, should everybody know everything? I think it's important we all take on board in our lives what's relevant to us at that point in time. And so if we've got a general interest in genetics and genomics, we hear the general information, and it's when it becomes very relevant on a daily basis that we start to, for some reason, we start to get into more detail. And so, using Tim's example, he had a particular question or a thought that then triggered him to go and look at the theory and what's known of that in more detail. And we all do that in aspects of our lives. And I think that what we need to be really aiming for is that those resources, good tools, are there for people to find easily, to get the right amount of information for them, for their situation at the right point in time, and that where education and so forth comes in is really helping people to be able to understand and access that information rather than trying to give people mini science degrees. And so in genetic counselling practice, when people come in and see me, they all have some understanding of genetics already. It might not be entirely an accurate understanding, or it might not be the same understanding that I have. But it's very important for me to understand what that is, because every one of you, will have already beliefs about traits, the way they're passed through your family, that may or may not reflect what's actually happening to the genes and the genetic variation. And so genetic counselling is really a process of communication one-on-one to develop that mutual understanding. And some genetic counsellors believe that's a matter of giving a lot of information in a short amount of time. Others, and I'm sort of more on this end, believe that it's more tailored to the amount of information that person wants to know, and really requires a good explanation or exploration of the implications of that information and what it means, or that situation and what it means for that person.
Thank you, Clara. So here we are stuck with at least one important question, and that is, should the public know everything? Should they be informed of everything? Should you be informed of everything? Or aren't we using in our day-to-day lives lots of things that we actually don't know a lot about? Take your car. How many of you are able to take a carburetor apart? Take your fridge. Take your iPhone. I mean, if this one drops into the lavatory, I don't know how to repair it. In fact, our whole lives are glued together by misunderstandings and lack of knowledge. Yet in the area of genetics, this feels like a major problem, possibly because genetics is so closely related to our own biology, either to the medical side or to the food side or whatever. Somehow it feels wrong not to understand things. But can we really? So, Tim, you posed this question first. I'll give you a chance to react a little bit to those who have spoken here, and then maybe one or two reactions from the panel, and we'll get the public to speak.
Yeah, I guess genetics isn't... I mean, I should say, I used to have to teach genetics. And genetics, as she was taught originally, was unbelievably difficult. I mean, I didn't find it easy at all, statistics, and then you had these sort of funny things with fruit flies with pink wings or stunted growth, and they crossed them, and then you got ratios and stuff, and that was very hard. And then suddenly it became very easy, because it was just a matter of, DNA made RNA, made protein, and suddenly it was really, really easy to understand. The geneticists, I noticed, hated that, because it sort of demystified their approach, because they loved it to be a very formal, sort of mathematical kind of a science.
Isn't DNA to most people the same as quantum genetics or quantum mechanics?
No, I don't think so. I mean, DNA is just a chemical. And
let me ask the public, just a show of hands. Who feels that DNA is just a chemical? If you feel that way, please raise your hand. Okay.
So what do you think DNA is then? I mean, is it
Is there something special about DNA that makes the public debate about DNA different from other chemicals or other scientific products? Do you feel that? Or is it all complicated in any case? I can, because of the light, I cannot see
There's
that.
a question
Go ahead.
down there. Comment.
非常に興味深い質問
Hang on a second.
Just wait.
Wait a minute. Wait a
Wait
minute.
a minute. We'll have to get organized here.
Sorry.
OK, please set the earphone channel 1. Channel 2,失礼。Channel 2 English. Channel 2.
Oh,
OK?
can you do it? Oh, that's super.
大丈夫ですか ?Alright?
Yeah,
OK?
okay.
OK? はい。
Okay.
今のですね、非常に刺激的な質問に、関連して思うんですけども、主としてティム・ハントさんからですね、お考え聞きたいんですけども、DNA っていうのはですね、一種やっぱりこれ生命体、合計なミクロな生命体で非常にミステリアスな作用があると思います。つまり、我々にとってみれば、サイエンティストにとってみるとミステリアスでありファジーであるですね存在だと思うんですね。その時にですね、そのミステリアスなこの作用を生むこの DNA がその一種のこの生命体として共通のリズムとか、共通のパターンっていうのがですね、ミステリアスを生む共通のパターンとか共通のリズムがあると思うんですよね。ですから一つとしてDNA を細かくね分析するアナライズする方向がまず一つ、あともう一つはですね、そのミステリアスクリエイティブミステリアスを生むですね、その仕組みなり枠なり共通なパターンなりリズムなりを追求するっていう、要するに複雑系コンプレクシティに基づくリサーチっていうものがそれと同じくらい必要で、その両方が相まってですね、やっとそのミステリアスゾーンっていうものが果たしてそのどのようなものなのか徐々に分かってくるんじゃないかと思うんですが、私はぜひともそのティム・ハントさんのお考えをぜひとも聞いてみたい。Yeah, please.
We'll give Tim the floor to elucidate all of this.
Well, I would, I mean, let's get a few facts straight here. You have, what is it, 2 meters of DNA in every single one of your cells. So you have roughly, each one of us contains something like 10 to the 13th to 10 to the 14th molecules of DNA, and a meter in length. Half of the DNA comes from your mother, the other half comes from your father, and I would say it's just like a chemical dictionary. It gives us a potentiality. Right. It specifies the proteins that your cells can possibly make. Now the problem is, and that's sort of relatively simple, what becomes much more complicated is you can read out from that set of potentialities all kinds of different combinations of things in time and in space. And that's where the complexities come in, and not only that, there's a reflexivity about it because the proteins that the DNA can work back on the DNA itself, and that's where real mysteries come in, because it's pretty unpredictable, actually, from the DNA sequence, what exactly the shape of your nose will be, right? Or how clever you are, or how fast you can run, all those interesting, humanly interesting things.
I think the key thing that makes DNA and therefore genomics different in the public debate is indeed that it is not a one-to-one simple relationship, that you cannot deduct from somebody's DNA how they are, not as a person, but not even just physiologically. There are all kinds of things that happen in between.
Yes, you remember that the gorilla DNA is 99% identical.
And yet there are a few,
but they can't talk.
Yes, a
so
few other differences as well. But I think that makes it different from a simple chemical. That's why I take objection to your saying, well, DNA is just another chemical. I think for most chemicals we know.
But no, it is. I must insist that it is a chemical.
Yeah, it is a chemical. It is a chemical. But it's not a simple chemical.
It's a complicated, very, very large chemical. It's a miracle we know about it.
It's a mysterious chemical.
But it's not that mysterious.
Let me go back to the panel. It's a little bit mysterious because there is not a deterministic.
But it doesn't have a life force in it.
No, exactly.
I believe. That would be my contention.
Well,
whereas some people might say it did.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah,
let's move
that's
to
why
the panel and then we'll go back to the audience.
Well, that's why I emphasize the importance of school education, and I think communicating science to the public through the mass media is necessary, but can be tricky because people pick up
dangerous.
Yeah, pick up some of the clear things, and I think the image of genes are now more deterministic than the actual genes are.
Exactly.
So I think you need a lot of time and a lot of work to really communicate what the genes are. I mean, that's the difficulty of genetics.
Yeah, this is the confusion I think we have with the public. Any comments from this side of the panel?
Yeah, I think this is a fascinating sort of debate because I think it really is the intersection, again, between the scientific facts and scientific understanding of what DNA means and what we know and don't know about it, and the public's, what the meaning of DNA is to the public. And I've been fascinated by an expression I've been hearing recently, and it's in my DNA, where it's really things that they're talking about. They're clearly not in a person's DNA, but their love or passion for a particular thing like sport. But what that's saying to me is that DNA is seen as something fundamental and intrinsic to the individual, regardless of whether we all are using, it's the same chemicals, but it's the meaning of that DNA to people. And that's what they're saying. This is something fundamental, intrinsic to me, rather than it's truly in my DNA. And so we need to be taking that perception of DNA as something fundamental and intrinsic alongside the science in the way we consider public communication.
Can we say that DNA or genomics have taken on a kind of metaphorical meaning it's my personality, or it's some driver or something that explains me or the individual, and that it's actually the way it is perceived in the public is not so much in the mechanistic, chemical way we as scientists see that. Would that be correct to say? Hasegawa-san, can I ask you any more comments from your side? Or
So it's difficult to say, but people don't, as I mentioned before, that people don't, Dr. Tim mentioned, what DNA is it exactly? That people don't know exactly. It's a very problem.
Yeah. Okay, the audience. Any comments are, of course, welcome, but just think a little bit about, has DNA a metaphorical meaning for you? Or is that part of the communication gap between science and the public? Or is there anything else that would explain why genetics are so difficult when it comes to public understanding? And can I have a show of hands of those who want to say something so that I get a sense of how many questions there are? I'm doing this because the light shines in my eyes. So I see quite a few hands. Let us start. I'm left-handed, so let's start on the left-hand side, if that's all right. I think there's some people with microphones. Could you please state your name and possible organization or where you're talking from? Okay. And if you speak just slowly so that the translation can match.
Okay. My name is Felix Marx. I'm working at the National Museum of Nature and Science. I'm a paleontologist myself. Just in terms of that metaphorical meaning, just a comment really, I think it links together with science communication, because in a way, when you try to explain what DNA is, what it does, how it works, you can't expect that everyone has the basic understanding of like the chemical background, the way the DNA is actually expressed. So you need to somehow summarize it in a way that is understandable and that is that is in a way illustrative. And I guess that goes for a lot of science. It goes for a lot of other fields as well. And that's a problem of science communication, because sometimes scientists feel like being pressured into delivering such a picture that is easy to grasp by politics, sometimes by science communication, something that is very simple. And it isn't simple. A lot of science is a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of mays and buts and ifs. And it's very difficult to get that across, I think. And there maybe science communication in particular has a role to play for someone who specializes in getting that uncertainty across in an appropriate way.
So the challenge you're saying is we always need the images or the metaphors in order to communicate, but the thing is to try and find the right ones.
Yes.
Okay, I had a few more hands up from that side, on the left-hand side. Somebody else there? Then we move to the right-hand side. Yes, in the middle.
Or in the middle.
Middle and the back.
Well, we always like to take sides, so we don't use the middle. There's no middle ground here.
Thank you. So my name is Tuati Benoukraf. I'm French, working in Singapore, National University of Singapore. So within scientists, I also think that we simplify too much. So as you said, actually, 99% of the human genome and the gorilla genomes are similar, which is quite wrong. I did the calculation myself, actually. And what I realized is that we just sequence it 60%, 70% of the genome. Most of the genome actually is repetitive element, which we cannot locate it. We cannot actually sequence. And we have a lot of lack, actually, understanding our own genome, even within scientists. We say that most of the genome is similar with the monkey, etc., but we only analyze the genes. So it's true that 99% of genes are similar. But the genes are represented only 2% of the genome, right? So we are putting too much shortcuts between, what we really know and what we want to know, etc. And that's actually, I think, make the things more difficult to understand.
Okay. Yeah. So we simplify too much. You're not allowed to react yet, Tim. We'll get a few more questions. I have to keep Tim under control here. I said beforehand to I know. It's in your genes to keep quiet, is it? Yes,
let's
please.
go to the back. Yes.
Please go ahead. Somebody's coming with a microphone here on the fourth.
There was a question in the back.
Further back.
Oh, further back. But I also see one in front. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mitali Sengupta. I work in Kalinga Institute of Industrial Technology. I'm from India. Basically, when you were talking about the metaphor, well, I do think that for the common public, it's really, really difficult to understand what DNA is. As you were discussing that DNA is just a chemical, well, I don't think that for a common citizen across the world belonging to any non-biological science background, DNA is a chemical. It's a mystery. Because this is about public understanding. Go ahead. So, because as you said, like it's just a simple mathematical calculation of half of the genes coming from the father, half of the genes coming from the mother, and it's just the amalgamation of the same. But then I would like to point out that there are many such rare genetic diseases which neither the mother or the father has. And the person is completely confused from where my child got that particular disease. And we have n number of examples for that. So it's really, really important at this point in time just not to, focus only on science, but then to, actually make the general public aware of the do's and don'ts regarding genetics so that the world is actually a better place to live in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question here on the fourth row. If somebody with a microphone can come. I saw somebody raising his or her hand. Yes, go ahead.
In Japanese, okay?
Okay. Hang on a second.
Slowly. My name is Masaru Ashida. 私のお聞きしたいのは非常に個人的な疑問でもあるんですが、受精卵の卵子が異常があるかどうか、日本の今医療といいますか、医療の研究の中で、その異常を発見する技術とか研究する知識が広がっていると思うんですけども、これはマスコミの方もおられるのであえてお聞きするんですが、医者とか科学者の倫理という言葉で割と片付けられるんですが、やはり、私も実はちょっとその身内で、私の孫になるんですが、身内でそういう子がいまして、やはり親とか周り家族みんながよく日本語で言うと五体満足っていう言葉をよく言うんですが、頭が悪くてもいい、スポーツできなくてもいい、遅くてもいい、でも五体満足に生まれてほしいというのは我々は思うし、これは日本人だけの話ではなくて、グローバルな皆さんのお気持ちだと思うんですね。で、今日2点マスコミの方の代表がおられるんで、マスコミがそういうこういう異常の遺伝子問題を今後どういうふうに考えて取り上げたいのか、個人的意見で結構です。それから、先生方の中で、そういう倫理とか技術だけで割り切れない倫理とか気持ちとか親の気持ちとかという問題について一言ずつで結構なんですがコメントいただければと思います。
Okay, Super. Thank you very much. I think we'll. I just want to see if there's one more burning question before I turn to the panel. There's two more burning questions. 3, 4, 5. Wow. My God. Okay. Now here's my compromise. I'm going to take 2 more burning questions, and then when we have a break, you can sort of walk up to the panel and talk with them, because I'm under very strict instructions on the point of being fired from the next 2 panels in which I also have to sit. So I have to stick to the time. 1 question on the right-hand side and 1 on the left-hand side. And just the one of you who jumps up most, it's survival of the fittest here, gets the question. Okay, go ahead, since I can't see a thing. Where are the microphones? 1 question in the back there. Since I can't see a thing, okay, go ahead. Just get up, please. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, I am Anna Codilan from the University of Tokyo, and I'm not a genetics person, but I'm a scientist. I understand my science, but I don't fully understand what other scientists are doing. And I totally agree with Ms. Fresco's stand on DNA, the metaphorical meaning of DNA. But how I really wish that my genetics teacher could have explained what Tim Hunt explained earlier, so that I could have that simple understanding of what DNA is. And maybe if I understand DNA as what Tim Hunt explained earlier, then it would be easier for me to dispel the fears or maybe the confusion regarding the ethics of research about genetics and genomics. And I also agree with Kato-san's suggestion about communicating and leveling down to the education of genetics and genomics, like for high school and college. But my question is, so in educating genomics and genetics, how would you also use that approach for like developing countries?
Okay, good. That's a very specific question. 1 more question here on the right-hand side. Yes, please, go ahead. Get up, otherwise you don't get a chance.
Stand up.
And a brief question it has to be. Yeah, it works.
My name is Akira, and I'm not a scientist. I'm an employee. And I don't know quite about genetics, but one thing that I thought was that when you talk about genetics, like genome, it's like we can't see it, and what for the common citizens like us, when we can't see it, it's very difficult to imagine what it is, and I think that's the major problem for us. And so I think, like Mr. Kato mentioned earlier, the education will be a very important thing, and to solve this problem. And my question is that how will you change the education in the level of college or high school? Do you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah.
And if you have, I'd really like to hear it.
Okay, thank you very much. Good questions. So education, personal questions, metaphorics last. Let me ask, you all each have 1 minute to answer, because we have no more time. So, Kato-san.
Time is ticking down.
Exactly. Kato-san, 1 minute on education or anything else.
Okay. I think the difficulty of genetics education is that genetics has many aspects, such as molecular biology aspects and inheritance aspect and disease aspect. So I think you should be able to prepare some kind of basic package, including all of the different aspects. And I think we can prepare it for at least high school level education, not just in developed countries, but also developing countries. That's my belief. And secondly, thank you, ethics aspect of the fertilizer egg analysis. I think it is now clear that to decide a policy, to make a policy, say national policy for ethical issues, we have to talk to patients and the families and the citizens, and that's a kind of a standard standard practice now. So I'm sure you can say something, and I'm ready to hear.
Okay.
So that's
Thank you very
thing,
much,
yes.
Kato-san. Hasegawa-san.
Yes. At the embryo screening before implanting the ovary, yesterday, so Japan Medical Doctors Society Obstetrics and Gynecology had the board of approved the embryo screening in Japan clinical study. But as a media, we want ordinary people to know what is the background of the new technology, what's going on now. It's a role of the media. Not way media stand pro and against the new technology. We want to stand equally the point of view. So people want, at the media, so want to know the background of the new technology, and people discuss about that. That's I want the role of media, I think.
Okay. Thank you very much, Clara. Your view.
Yeah, I'll touch on the emotional impact that was raised. That a section, and quite a maybe larger than we might expect, proportion of the community are people that have genetic conditions or who have a family member with a genetic condition. And so the science for them is very personal, and it's not just the facts and figures, it's the emotional consequences of that, coping with that condition, and also the choices they face and the uncertainties that are there for them with their own child or their own condition. And that's why early on, when genetic testing started to become more widely available, that the profession of genetic counsellors was developed. And that's what we do, is really work to try and support families through those decisions, not only by providing the facts and the figures and explaining genetics in a way that we hope will be understandable, but also to explore what the consequences and implications and values and support decision making and help people to adjust to that information. And that's not something that happens immediately, that's something that happens over time. And having an understanding of the science of the genetics can help that, because sometimes people can feel quite guilty that it might have been something they did that caused this condition, and so knowing that something that's due to a change in the DNA can be very helpful. But there are also other aspects that are complex, and this also affects, as the gentleman really indicated, it affects not only the person themselves directly, but also other family members. So working with family dynamics and family communication as well.
Thank you, Clara. Very clear. Tim, last but not least.
Yeah, I was very moved, actually. I was asked to meet in the Houses of Parliament members of families with ataxia, telangiectasia. Yeah. So this is it's a horrible, horrible disease, and I guess most of the subjects die in sort of teenage years or something like that. So they've got a really good child who then stops being able to move, and then they're wheelchair bound. And I was very impressed that these parents were extremely supportive of basic research. They clearly had no difficulty in understanding the genetics. I think it's not that difficult to understand once you really get into it. I mean, if you've been poorly educated in school, by all means, you know, that we all get confused we confuse ourselves, and bad teachers can confuse us even more. But I don't think it's that complicated. The big problem here, however, is that our sort of knowledge and understanding runs ahead of what we can do about it. If we could correct these simple genetic mutations, I mean, they're simple chemical alterations, they have profound consequences for the individual. If we could correct them, that would be fantastic, but we can't at the moment. I very much hope that in the future we will be able to, and I think we need a lot more research into that. And I think there are promising avenues, actually, coming down the pikes, and then that would really change things amazingly, because then you could, you know, I mean, for example, I have two girls, they both have terrible teeth. I don't know where they get that from, but it's clearly from either their mother or their father or the two of us together. Probably the two of us together. My teeth aren't that bad, at least not as bad as my children's. So it's that kind of, you know, I mean, so maybe in 100 years' time we'll be able to give everybody perfect teeth. But it isn't true now. We could explain why your teeth are bad, but not do anything about it. And that's unfair.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, let me try in the last few seconds to summarize a few of the issues we discussed, because I think there are quite a few things that may help us to go further in this issue of public debate. I think we all said education is key. High school, primary school, but education all throughout life. As science advances rapidly, education should match, and it is not only when you're about 15 or 20 years old that you should be educated, but all through life. I think the second one is that we should recognize as scientists, but also as science writers, that this is as much about emotion as it is about rationality. And metaphorical images or feelings or images that help to make things clearer are on one hand wonderful because they help understanding, but on the other hand, they also carry some risk. For example, that you get expressions like, it's in my genes or my genes determine, etc., etc. So finding the right images and contextualizing those images in a way that makes people understand that this is about advancing science is very important. And then thirdly, I think it is about science as a moving target. There are lots of things we cannot do. There are lots of promises in science. Science should find a balance between what it can deliver, what it might deliver, and what kind of public support is needed. And it's great to see in the area of medicine, for example, that there is support from those who are most closely associated with, for example, a hereditary disease. But there are other issues of science that are, of course, much more difficult to communicate, where the promise isn't even clear. So finding the balance in the images, in the emotions, in the promises, I think is really the key towards better communication with the public. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your contributions, and give a hand to the panel, please.
Thank you.
We have a brief break, I understand. 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Exactly. Yes.
ただいまより15分間の休憩とさせていただきます。お手洗いは7階に1箇所、5階に2箇所ございます。次回のストリーム2では人類進化の未来の理解に向けてと題して15時から開始いたします。なお、7階ではストリーム1、5階ではストリーム2も同時開催しております。それぞれ会場間のご移動は自由になっております。引き続き、ノーベルプライズダイアローグ東京2015をよろしくお願いいたします。We will now take a 15-minute break. There is one restroom on the 7th floor and two on the 5th floor. Next stream 3 is entitled Understanding the Future of Human Evolution and will begin at 3 p.m. Stream 1 is being held concurrently on the 7th floor and Stream 2 concurrently on the 5th floor. You are welcome to move freely between streams. Please stay with us for the rest of the Nobel Prize Dialogue Tokyo 2015. ご来場の皆様にご案内申し上げます。本日はノーベルプライズダイアローグ東京2015にご来場いただきまして誠にありがとうございます。会場内は一部を除き自由席となっております。前の席から順にお詰め合わせの上ご着席ください。会場内は禁煙でございます。指定の喫煙所をご利用ください。携帯電話は電源をお切りいただくか、マナーモードへの設定をお願い申し上げます。また、恐れ入りますが、乳幼児連れのご参加はご遠慮くださいませ。本日は同時通訳をご利用いただけます。同時通訳レシーバーは会場入り口にて配布しております。日本語はチャンネル1、英語はチャンネル2でございます。必要に応じてご利用ください。同時通訳レシーバーは出口で回収させていただきます。お持ち帰りにならないようご協力をお願いいたします。会場内では Wi-Fi が使用可能です。本イベントではストリーミング配信を行います。公式ホームページからアクセスできますのでご活用ください。なお、有事の際は、スタッフの指示に従って待機、避難していただきます。次回、ストリーム3、人類進化の未来の理解に向けては、15時を予定しております。開始まで、今しばらくお待ちください。Welcome everybody. May I have your attention, please? Thank you very much for coming to the Nobel Prize Dialogue Tokyo 2015.We have a number of reserved seats, but the rest of the hall is open seating. Could you kindly move up front to fill the seats from front to back, then make yourselves comfortable there? Smoking is not allowed in this venue. Please use the designated smoking areas if necessary. Please turn off your cell phones or switch them to silent mode. We also request that you refrain from bringing babies and small children with you.We will have simultaneous interpretation today. The simultaneous interpretation receivers are being distributed at the entrance to the venue. Please pick one up if you wish to listen to the interpretation. Japanese is available on channel 1 and English is available on channel 2. Please return the simultaneous interpretation receivers at the exit after the session.We ask for your cooperation to make sure that they are not taken home with you. Wi-Fi is available in this venue. This dialogue will be live streamed over the internet. Please access the official website of the dialogue to view the live stream. In case of an emergency, please wait for instructions from a staff. If necessary, you will be given directions for evacuation.The next stream 3, Understanding the Future of Human Evolution, and will begin at 3 p.m. Please wait a little longer until we are ready to begin.
Is this working? You seat people as you wish. It's fine.
Please.
Okay. It's okay. Let's
Okay. Thanks, sir. Thank you.
So hello everybody, my name is Adam Smith and I just wanted to say a few introductory words to this panel because if you look in your programs you'll notice that there are 6 names associated with the program, but unfortunately the moderator, Chris Gunter, who should have been here, is still in Atlanta in the US. So she could try distance moderation, but that might be hard. So she tried to get on 3 different planes and none of them took off, so she had to give up coming. So we're very lucky that Juan Enriquez has very kindly offered to take her place as moderator and has stepped off the panel. And so this is the panel on the future of human evolution. And we have Juan Enriquez, who you've already met from the morning sessions. We have Professor Sata from Sokandai. Hello. We have Professor Richard Roberts, who's the 1993 Nobel laureate in physiology or medicine. We have Professor Yamamoto from Tohoku University, and we have Professor Andrew Farr, who is one of the 2006 Nobel laureates in physiology or medicine. And as you know, this is an interactive session, so I know that Juan will be inviting questions and comments from the audience. And with that, I shall leave you to it.
So we're going to get through a very short initial section, and the good news is you picked exactly the right panel. We're going to understand at the end of 44 minutes the future of all human evolution. We have 4 intrepid Indiana Jones of science who are going to answer all of your questions. And we're going to start with Dr. Sada and ask you, what are your thoughts on human evolution? And where do you see primates evolving?
Okay, it's a little bit difficult question. But so I addressed this question in 2 points. One is about the relationship between genome and the environments. And especially our genome cannot cope with a drastic, rapid changes in an environment by human activity. The second is about the effect of the expanding population on future genetic diversity, especially selection acting locally cause some mismatches between the genome, our genome and environments. So our humans are facing an unprecedented evolutionary phase. So this is caused by a rapid environmental changes by human activity, again, I said, and by environment, enormous expansion of human evolution. So this is I think these 2 topics is a problem for what we need to solve, what we need to consider.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. One of my intellectual heroes is Dr. Roberts, and not only is he an incredibly smart person, but he's a person who can implement change and make a whole series of people's lives better. So as you begin to think about our understanding of the manipulation of the microbiome, how do you think that's going to change us, and what are the implications of changing the microbiome?
Well, I think already we're probably seeing the effects of it. There's no doubt that some aspects of obesity are caused by changes in the microbiome. We're wiping out the bacteria by using antibiotics in a really very reckless way. We do not understand what we're doing most of the time when we use antibiotics. You know, mothers take their kids and they have a sniffle and the doctor prescribes an antibiotic. Would be much better most of the time to prescribe a placebo, but they don't do that. We look at the animals. Almost all farm animals now get low doses of antibiotics. Why? Because it makes them grow a little faster, and so the farmer can make more money from it. And of course those antibiotics get into the environment, they get into the bugs that are living on the animals, and eventually they come back to us. And so I think our use of antibiotics has been just scandalous, absolutely scandalous. And we're at a point now where while there are 1 or 2 antibiotics in the pipeline that are really very good and can kill almost everything, I think you have to ask yourself, do you want to kill everything? That is, do you want to take yourself to a stage where you don't have any of these bacteria left inside you, particularly the ones that are good ones. I mean, you know, what you want to do is to kill the bad ones. And so I think if we're going to really pursue this line, and I think we will, I have a research institute in China that is going to be moving in this direction. We want to understand how the microbiome works, how it is that the good bacteria can really take care of the bad ones, how the good bacteria can take care of cancers when they arise, and find ways in which we can cultivate them inside ourselves in a way that makes us a great deal healthier. And the reason I like this area so much is, as I showed you in the tuberculosis slide, 60% of the genes in tuberculosis, we have no idea what they do. Even the ones that we think we know what they're doing, we probably have a number of those wrong. That as we can do some basic research to find out what the genes in the microbiome bacteria are doing, so we will get to the mechanisms of how they're able to help us, how they're able to cure infections. And that, I think, will be really useful. And if you remember, I had one extra column on my slide which said bacteriophages. And if you look at what's happening now, people are beginning to use bacteriophage therapy to try to kill bacteria. And this, in principle, could be very precise. This is probably the only area where I think maybe precision medicine is a proper term, because if we can find the right bacteriophages to kill off some of the pathogens in a very specific fashion, where they save the good bacteria and just kill the bad ones, that would be great. But we have a long way to go. We've got to work out an awful lot of basic science before we can get this going. But we already know that without doing a lot of the basic science, their experiments can be done in the clinic with fecal transplants and other kinds of transplants. So I'm really optimistic. I think that there is every chance that as we understand the microbiome, learn how to manipulate it, we can solve a lot of the problems that we currently have that we consider medical problems just by playing around with the microbiome.
Dr. Yamamoto-san, in addition to being an extraordinary scientist, you've been an extraordinary humanitarian and contributor to the Tohoku Medical Megabank and to the 2011 earthquake relief. And that's an extraordinary combination for a great scientist. How do you think the lives of humans will change in the future?
Thank you. And first of all, sorry of my husky voice. All right. Many of you in this room remembers almost 4 years ago, we had a great East Japan earthquake, and that was very at that moment, I was a dean of the School of Medicine, Tohoku University, and the first 2 weeks or the emergency period, that was really hard. But after the emergency period, we started thinking about what can we do as a basic scientist at this occasion, basic molecular biologist at this occasion. And today I'm going to talk about the Tohoku Medical Megabank project, and also the future of the human evolution, probably 2 topics. The one topic is the future medicine. I've been thinking future medicine is depend on the genetic factor and the environmental factor correlation. So using the genetic factor and the environmental factor, we can do the personalized healthcare or personalized medicine or preemptive medicine. So the basis of these future medicine heavily depend on the human evolution and genome and environmental analysis. But I want to tell you another aspect. So after the earthquake, we are thinking probably those natural disaster, earthquake, tsunami, the nature determines the timing or the occasions, or God determines the natural disaster. But the constructive regeneration recovery from the natural disaster is our task. So
we can work on the reconstruction by using all the power of our society. And if we think about the history, our history, human beings' history, is the regeneration, recovery from the natural disaster. So we are thinking the human evolution, one aspect of the human evolution reside in this, the constructive regeneration from the disaster. Thank you.
So Dr. Fire has had an extraordinary career, and he's been at the center of every place where there are interesting things going on in life sciences, starting out in California at Berkeley and then moving to the East Coast to MIT, and then going back to the origin where a whole lot of molecular biology was first met at Cambridge and Oxford. And as you think about this and you think of all the changes you've seen, how should we be using RNAi to accelerate human evolution? And how do you maintain communication and accountability with the general public as you go forth with these extraordinary achievements?
Two different questions. I'm not sure we should be deliberately trying to do any human evolution with RNAi. It's certainly maybe a valuable tool in doing the kinds of environmental engineering that will be useful to provide food, and perhaps providing food as part of human evolution. I mean, I actually have a question for you, which is based on your talk earlier. You talk about sort of a discontinuity in human evolution coming with current techniques. And I guess I don't see the argument. I mean, I see that we will have control of our evolution, but I'm not sure I see the argument of the discontinuity there so clearly. The methods are going to be perhaps more precise, although they're not yet, and those methods really aren't there to do targeted changes in the human genome. I think if one does that, we all understand that the most likely consequence will be very sick people that would come out of that, and maybe a few people that were almost normal. But do you think there really is a discontinuity that has already happened, or are we still waiting for that?
No, I think you're beginning to see the discontinuity, and you see it first on the edges with deadly diseases. So in the measure that we're able to cure some mitochondrial diseases and that passes on to the next generation, or in the measure that you find the single base pair that you change for cystic fibrosis. And I think from there, the technologies that you begin to see at the high school and college level with biohacking may or may not lead to human things. You'll see them first in agriculture, you'll see them first in bacteria, you'll see them probably for the first time in humans in sports or beauty because the stakes are so high. But I think as soon as those instruments are available, you're going to see some initial use of it. And I think the discontinuity is there in the sense that we can, for the first time, think of inserting the gene code into a plant seed. Think of inserting it deliberately into a bacteria. And that's not random mutation. And I think that is a big discontinuity in the history of life.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the technologies that have been there are quite powerful technologies as they are. Even relying on random mutation, you can still select out a variant that has any property that you're interested in. Not to say that I'm not all for being able to do that in specific circumstances, particularly in agriculture, not in the human circumstance, but in agriculture, because it's more precise. And it still depends on what you're selecting, and that's a decision that's made, and that decision can be made in a variety of ways. But I guess I don't see, we've been able to treat certain diseases for a long time. We've been able to treat diabetes. That's going to certainly affect, and I think many of us would feel in a beneficial way, human evolution, is that we increase our ability to.
So I can offer you a discontinuity. We're not there yet, but I think we're getting there. One thing that's happening is that human fertility is going down. Mm-hmm. So more people have trouble having babies these days than they ever used to. As soon as we are able to routinely fix genetic diseases by CRISPR or whatever techniques we use, that will also move away from the natural way of having children. And I could see a time, maybe not too far from now, when normal intercourse, as is practiced by most people, is not the way that you produce babies. That would be a discontinuity.
So that means that the population size of the present human is almost 7 billion.
Mm-hmm.
But
It will go down.
It will go down. You
Global
expect.
warming is going to take care of that.
I think that's an open question at this point, as to the point at which it really will be feasible to do genetic engineering in humans, and the number of things that we don't know, the chances for unwanted side effects of changes that you didn't intend to make, and the chances of unwanted side effects of the changes you do intend to make are both really substantial. And I think the lessons from that are going to be fairly devastating. I'm not saying that people won't try to do those things, but I don't know that it will become the standard. I think we'll learn that biology is smarter than we thought it might have been.
But if you think about in vitro fertilization, when that first came along, everybody was against it, right? No one wanted it. There was a massive outcry in the newspapers, in the media, in the churches. Every religious organization was against it. And now, in vitro fertilization is as common as can be. It's everywhere. Everybody wants it. People know about it. People accept it. It's not a problem. The same thing is with cloning. Should we clone humans? Can we clone humans? Well, I believe that if someone came along and said, hey, I can make you a clone for your baby, because you can't have it by any normal way, people would try that, and that would become perfectly acceptable. So my prediction, one prediction I make, is that human cloning will take place, but it'll be as a fertility treatment. So I think we're moving there. I think you can see society moving in this general direction. And certainly unless we do something about many of the foods we eat and other things that go on, the fertility rate will continue to go down.
And I think, another discount just to push this is, if you look at what killed us in the 1850s, the top 10, not one of those makes the list of the top 10 today. Because we've been engineering not the human body directly, but we've engineered what used to take us out. And we've decreed that certain things should go extinct. And again, that's not natural selection, that's our choosing. We will not have smallpox. We will hopefully not have polio. Creates other problems, but it's increased our lifespan very substantially. And just on Dr. Roberts' point, sex is one of the most interesting areas out there because we've decoupled sex from time. Because we're the only species that when it has a lot of time, a lot of wealth, a lot of food, and we're protected, we don't reproduce. Every other animal on Earth, when that happens, you get an explosion in folks. And here, the richer the country, the fewer children. Any other ways we're changing human beings? Or anything else you'd like to debate from this panel, past panels, the morning presentations? I love the way you started this. Keep pushing.
Yeah, maybe we should open it up to the audience at that point for questions.
Okay. So just be short, please, in your questions. Just wait for the microphones, please. That way we'll get a translation.
I'm sorry, my question is Japanese. Please set interpretation earphone. Okay? Channel to English. Yes, please set. Channel 2. Switch on.
Yeah.
Okay, switch on channel 2. Can you understand?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay? Okay,チャンネル2。はい。私はですね、ロバーツドクターと、それからファイアドクター、お二人に質問したいことがあります。それはですね、この人類の進化いわゆるエボリューションなんですが、そのエボリューションであるのか、果たしてそれはですね、実はエボリューションのようでいて、トランスフィギュレーションに過ぎないのではないかという、そのですね、エボリューションなのか、 トランスフィギュレーションなのかという疑義が非常に必要になってくると思います。その時の尺度、スタンダードはですね、2つあって、1つは人類と地球環境と社会のダイバーシティ、多様性。ダイバーシティとあとは持続性、サステナビリティ。つまり、ヒューマンサステナビリティ、エンバイロメンタルサステナビリティ、ソーシャルサステナビリティ、それからそれがそのサステナビリティはまたダイバーシティでもなるわけですが、それがですね、持続性と多様性が保障されたときに初めてエボリューションになるのではないか、人類。それがなければですね、エボリューションと思っていたのが単なるトランスフィギュレーションであったんじゃないのか、そこら辺のところの疑義がですね、科学者の間で非常に大切なキーポイントになると思うんですが、ロバート先生とファイヤー先生のお考えを、ぜひともお聞かせください。
Well, you've come across a very important point here, which is the diversity point. And the semantic question, is it evolution, is it not evolution? Whatever it is, if we can use the technologies to promote diversity, then we're doing something good. If we can, so 5 of us are wearing glasses. You were wearing glasses earlier. They've come off, but and that's because if we didn't have glasses, some of us would be running into walls and eventually be evolved again. Certainly, we wouldn't be able to drive in Silicon Valley, and so we wouldn't be able to procreate there. But it's really critical for those and larger things to be able to facilitate a diverse human population, whether it's people that learn differently, whether it's people that see differently. That benefits mankind, personkind, tremendously. And so I think that the technologies that do that are ones that will be beneficial. Technologies that limit diversity because we get rid of a certain fraction of the population are going to hurt us. If we get rid of people that think about things differently, if we get rid of people that have different kinds of cognition and have what we might consider to be deficits in cognition, I think we'll be losing something in our population. We'll be losing something in the ability of the human race to really move forward. And so I think there's a real benefit and a difference between using the technology to eliminate diversity and using it to sustain it and to essentially enable a diverse population to survive in the modern world.
So we're going to do a couple of rapid fire questions. Whoever has the microphone over here, please give somebody the microphone over here, and at the same time give somebody the microphone over there. So we're ready. So we'll take one here and then give it to anybody over here. Please.
I have a son who was born with attached toes, and for cosmetic reasons we chose to separate them. I'm curious, how do we go about thinking about which random mutations that we should embrace and which random mutations we should address?
Great, and we'll take one more question over here, and then you can pick any answer you want. And please give the microphone to somebody over here. Please go ahead.
I have a question for Professor Roberts. You mentioned that human cloning would take place in the future. Would take place in the near future. But what about designer babies? Do you think parents would manipulate the genes to make children ideal, or you think it's a different problem? Do you think it's different from human cloning?
So we'll let you take that one, and then either of you or both of you can take the first question if you wish.
So I think it's a different question, the whole designer baby question. I'm sure there will be people who will think this is a good thing to do. Personally, I think it's a foolish thing to do. I suspect that when the politicians get involved, they too will think it's a stupid thing to do and will try to stop it. But nevertheless, you can easily see there will be people who want their kid to be a great golfer, or they want their kid to be wonderful at some sport or something else. We already see this with the use of drugs in order to enhance people's ability to do sports. I think if we could get rid of the stupidity gene, that might be a good one to go first.
We like that.
Okay. So last year we've determined 1,000 Japanese full genome sequence with a very high coverage. And as you know, the our cell contains 3 billion 3 billion base pair information, and among the 3 times 10 to the 9th, the 30 million base pairs contains the sequence variation with a certain frequency. So the fixing the sequence variation, such a endeavor is impossible. The diversity is the nature of the human beings. Individual person like me and the Professor Roberts, the difference of the sequences is 3 million. So the genome sequence is such a diverse entity, and it's not so easy to manipulate. So, that's the basic information. And I can't answer your question directly, but that's my kind of thoughts.
All right, we're going to do 2 more questions over here, and at any point, if you want to ask questions of each other, please interrupt and go ahead. So who has the microphone? Who has a microphone right now? 1, go. And let's give somebody a microphone over here at the same time. Please.
I'm not from biology field, so I want to ask in general. Out of 100% of the human biology, right now, in your estimation, how much percentage do we know about the human biology?
Who would like to take that? Easy question.
Well, the answer to all questions from a very good novel by Douglas Adams was 42, but I don't know if the answer is 42%, 4.2%, or 0.42%. I tend toward the latter. I don't know how other people would tend towards, but very small bit.
That's good. It stumped most of the panel, all of the panel. Who has a microphone over here? Who has the microphone? Go.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Ali Jamshidi, JSPS Fellowship Holder. This is my personal question. As you know, over the time, since the prehistory age, there were so many diseases. Over the time, the weak animal and human being were omitted by so many diseases. And the stronger Neanderthal human being killed the weaker human being. And over the time, a stronger generation of human beings and animals evolved. So, but now, by medical technology or so many things, we recover so many diseases. It might result in the weaker and the low resistant human being in future or not. So it means that we influence on the body self-resistance of the human being.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm thinking a different way. If you think about the sickle cell anemia disease and malaria, those weak sickle cell anemia patient or thalassemia patient survived a better way over the normal lesser people. The reason is the malaria can't infect to the sickle cell red blood cells. So the strong, weak is a relative word. We are living in the gene-environmental interaction circumstances. So I can't think about what is the strong or what is the weak. If you are thinking about the lion, male lion, probably the high power, strong lion can survive and have a harem. But our human beings, it's not the case.
Me? Okay. So related to Dr. Yamamoto's comment, I also think that the strong and weak is a relative content, and the strong selection coefficient, strength of the selection is determined by that environmental changes. So that if environment has changed, So once it is an advantageous mutation, but suddenly it becomes the deleterious one. So the world is such kind of relativeness, I think.
So let's have a question on this side of the room, please. And while the microphone gets there, I'm going to come back to Dr. Fire's answer of 42, because I think that's a really important question of how much do we actually know and how much do the young people in this room have left to discover? And I'd love you to just think about that as we get, after they get the next
Hi,
question.
my name is Smithali and I'm from India, KIIT School of Biotechnology. My question is, we all know that human beings are very much in number. Like the growth, the population explosion is increasing on one side. On the other hand, nowadays in this current generation, we see infertility amongst women. So do you feel that it is a result of evolution, or do you think that environment has a role to play? What I mean to say is there a role of heredity to is it nature's way of dealing with population explosion, or is it more of the environmental issue?
I think it's a mixture of almost everything you can think of, actually. So, for instance, one of the things that's happening in countries that have pretty high wealth is the ladies get pregnant later. They choose to wait until they have children. That is certainly having an effect. Environmental effects, which are reducing fertility, I think also have an effect. And undoubtedly nature also has an effect there. So I think it's a mixture of many, many things, and that we cannot easily deconvolute at this point.
Let's get the microphone over here, but how much is left to discover? Is it 0.42? Is it 4.2? Is it 42? I'd like to throw the question back to you.
My assumption is, my thought was not that it's 0.42 left, but that we've discovered 0.42% is probably close to, which leaves 99.58% by my calculation left to discover.
I think that's optimistic.
Many things for people to get Nobel.
The reason why biology is such a great area to be doing research in this day and age is we know almost nothing about it. You know, I feel sorry for the physicists. They know so much, and it's so difficult to find good experiments where you can go off and win a Nobel Prize. In biology, the field is open because all of this sequencing has told us how little we know about the field.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Who has a microphone? Please.
Hi, I have a question. I'm actually a physical chemist, so my question might be a little, ignorant. But is there a possibility, or remote possibility, that cancer is a form of evolution?
Wow.
Cancer
Another
is
easy
a form of
question.
evolution. There's no question about that. Cancer cells are an evolving population that is a formidable opponent for anybody trying to deal with it. I would say that. That doesn't mean that we are evolved to get cancer, but you are fighting an evolving cell population that is very canny and has a lot of tricks up its sleeve.
And how optimistic are you about the prospects of curing some of the cancers over the next 5 or 10 years? Any one of you?
I'm pretty optimistic, actually, that there will be quite a lot of cancers that we can cure. I think the problem comes in getting approval from the government to do it, because an awful lot of it involves very personalized kinds of treatments that the government doesn't know how to regulate. And I think we're going to have to encourage patients to get together and be advocates for what they want, in much the way that when, HIV was first spreading, the gays got together and made such a stink that the government finally let them get on and get their way and get stuff done. I think we're going to have to do that to bring real personalized medicine in. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
定年退職をしたごく一般のサラリーマンでした。私はですね、この分科会が今未来の理解に向けてということだったんですが、このアプローチをですね逆に変えて、この物事を一つ一つ理解するというよりかは、自分の中では不安というものが 科学とかバイオのことに関して考えていると不安が出てくるわけです。でその不安を一つ一つ取り除くというアプローチで何か話をいただきたいなと。で不安というのは自分としてはですね、命というものがまだなんだかよくわからないので、私は今命なるものということを表現したときにですね、それがその自己言及をすることになる、そしてそれをいじるということになっているわけですね、今のいろいろな遺伝子。そのことに関する気持ち悪さとか不安というものがどうしてもよぎってくるわけです。でこういった不安というものを取り除くことをどういうふうにしていったならば、この未来の理解に向けて、理解ができるのか。で不安というのはもう一つテクノロジーとしてですね、2年前に IT システムやネットワークがですね、人間を環境として進化し始めたという文章に目にしました。もう一つはですね、マウスの実験で嬉しい記憶をですね、悲しい記憶を嬉しい記憶に書き換えるということがアメリカで日本のノーベル賞の方が実験で成功したというニュースを見ました。こういったものというものはですね、我々一般人にしてみると非常に不安に思うわけです。で今まで科学というもの、こういうものについては倫理というものがある程度ブレーキをかけてきたんですが、それだけでいいのかなという疑問があります。そういったことについてご意見を伺うとありがたいですが。
Couple of you should take this one because this is.
So I'll tell you an anecdote. So I got to know a man called Michael DeBakey, who was a very famous heart surgeon. He was probably about 80 when I got to know him. And he told a story that when he was a young man, he was absolutely full of anxiety and stress. And he noticed that the people who were coming into his clinic were exactly the same way. All of the people with heart problems, they had high stress. They were worried about everything. And he decided that he was going to stop worrying. And he did. He found it within himself to stop worrying about stuff that he could do nothing about. And he died 3 days before his 100th birthday. So I think you can do it. I think you can actually adjust your own personality so that you do stop worrying about stuff. I don't worry about anything.
Can I? Yes. I feel the issue is like this way. So we don't know much about the genome or gene or inheritance. Those are things that we need to educate our students or the high school education, those education, and we really need to know the real real science. Then probably things are going much better. If you remember, some 10 years ago or 20 years ago, almost all Japanese hospitals do not tell you are the stomach cancer. So we usually pretend it's an ulcer, ulcer. But these days, almost all good Japanese cancer hospitals tell the patients, you are the cancer. Let's fight together to overcome the cancer. So knowing the real entity of the gene or inheritance genome is important. And so outside the education or real communication, life science communication is needed, required in our society.
All right, we'd like to hear from a couple of
Could
college
I add one thing?
Oh, yes, of course, please.
I think one thing you have to recognize is that we live in a society in which the media and politicians like nothing better than to scare you, right? Every story that is big on the news is always trying to scare you in some way. The politicians, they like to scare you because then here is a danger that they can protect you from. So just stop watching television and stop reading the papers.
All right. College students, high school students, please. We'd like to hear a couple of questions from you. Please raise your hands. Please.
I'm actually a medical student at Tohoku University, and I know Dr. Yamamoto, and I would like to ask about gene editing technology, and maybe in near future we will be able to edit so-called bad sequence in the fertilized egg or something. So I would like to know if it's acceptable to edit the sequence which is reported to be harmful.
I'm very happy to have the great student like you, and very smart question. And the gene editing and the editing the somatic part of the gene is not allowed at this moment in our society. But that's a good idea, and by the use of the stem cell technology in combination, we may apply that technique. But again, as I told you, we have quite a lot of polymorphisms, and to do completely like that way is, I think, impossible.
All right. Other questions? Anybody?
That you would be comfortable with somatic gene editing. And I think that many of us would be comfortable with somatic gene editing. With germline gene editing being a much more complex discussion, I think that's maybe a more complete answer for.
Yeah, I agree.
Can you explain the differences in that for the audience and how you draw that line?
Somatic gene editing is not going to affect future generations, although it could through selection, but it doesn't actually change the genomes of future generations. A germline gene editing is going to change the human race genome in that one case. I'm not sure we should draw the line there, but that is where most of us intrinsically would draw the line. That also says that if somebody is sick, we will do anything to make that person well. In their body, cancer patient will treat them with something that will completely mess up a lot of the genome of any children they might have in order to make that person well, and then tell them you probably should have had children already because this is the consequence of that. So I think most in the medical community would agree to that kind of approach, and there are ways like banking eggs and sperm to get around the long-term issues of that. But germline is forever, and I think people are less comfortable with that.
So the decision in the UK last month to take on mitochondrial disease, you wouldn't have allowed that?
That's a complicated piece of algebra.
I guess
I don't know. I mean, that's beyond my pay grade, as they say.
Yeah. I think it was a great idea.
Other questions? Shy group. So what would be your advice? You know, there's a series of themes here. One is, how do we learn more about this so we don't allow ourselves to get scared? What are the opportunities that if you were coming out of college today, which areas would you find the most exciting that you think kids should be focused on and learning on of all the opportunities they have? And what's the role that Japan can play on an already extraordinary base? I mean, you've got some of the smartest minds in the world here. You're building a series of institutes. Where do you see Japan going in terms of science, and what should young Japanese students be focused on?
That's another very difficult question, and our strength is a relatively uniform ethnic living in here. I say relative, and so the gene environmental analysis will give us a good solution or the good findings. While thinking about the United States of America, it's a multi-ethnic society. So probably the population genetics and genome analysis study in this country may have a good strength. That's my personal view.
I'd like to give the three of you an opportunity to say anything you'd like to say as a closing remark.
Closing remark?
We'll come to Dr. Roberts first.
Yeah, I'll go first and then you can go later. I would answer that question by saying don't focus on money. There is so much focus in this world, and especially in the developed world, on money, and it is wrong. You don't need very much money to be happy. People who are happy in this world are the ones who wake up on a Monday morning and say, hey, I got to go to work. And on a Friday, they say, well, but what am I going to do over the weekend until I go to work again on Monday? So find a job that you can be really passionate about, and don't worry about the money. Give it no thought whatsoever. You don't need very much in order to live and to be happy.
Great. Dr. Sato?
So I think that regarding the question that the fairness to the technology, so I think that we do not need to feel fear on to know what is the real or what is the reality and what is the fact. And to know the fact is that the only one ability for human have. So our human want to know, and this curiosity cannot be stopped. And so our scientists would want to know the facts. And maybe. And the problem is that how to in the application of of this knowledge. So, and this application could be a consensus of the society.
Dr. Fire, send us on our way.
I mean, this great discussion. I mean, I would say the only question that I would give a slightly different answer to is the question of the anxiety. It's okay to be a little anxious, it seems to me, about what's happening in the world. The challenge is to turn the anxiety into something constructive, and that is indeed a challenge, but I think it can provide beneficial results. The public should be asking us, sufficiently anxious to be asking politicians and scientists, two kinds of questions. Why are we letting these kinds of things happen? And why aren't we doing this? Why are we using chemicals left and right on our food? Why aren't we taking other approaches? The same thing in human health. Why are we using antibiotics left and right? Why aren't we taking other approaches to this? So those are the kinds of questions that have to be asked. Maybe they're different questions, and those are questions you'll have to decide on. But there's a great value in that, and it just needs to be beneficially channeled.
Please join me in thanking this extraordinary panel.
ただいまより25分間のコーヒーブレイクとさせていただきます。7階ロビーに飲み物を用意しておりますので、ぜひご利用ください。同時通訳レシーバーは出口で回収させていただきます。お持ち帰りにならないようご協力をお願いいたします。